Rez Dog Walkers coming at you on location. This has been, I say this every guest, I say this is so awesome to be with you, but I think this is your third run on the show now. I got my brother, Deputy Chief Councillor, General Manager of the Kitasoo Economic Development Corporation, all-around good guy, birthday boy this week, Isaiah Robinson. How you doing, pal?
Good. Thank you for having me. It's a beautiful day for doing this and spending time with some good people. So I'm happy.
Nice. We got you back in Campbell River.
Yeah.
I think last time you and I were in Campbell River, my life took a drastic turn.
Yeah.
You and I were just starting up the Coalition for First Nations for Finfish Stewardship, and as some of our listeners are aware, my daughter went through some health problems a number of years ago, and that was the morning we found out. We brought, 15 different nations together here and had some meetings talking about the future of aquaculture in our territories, and I was all excited. I was going to help lead the charge, and I was like, sorry, I got to go away for a year.
Yeah.
So I just always wanted to appreciate it. I've never had a chance to really thank you for that. You stood up, we were just getting to know each other really, and I was like, okay, you got to chair this meeting now that you had no intentions of doing. How was that getting put on the spot like that? Like, here's the ball, run.
And I appreciate you trusting me to do that, and I think it worked out well. The lights were kept on, and we did our very best while we waited for you to come back in full force, and here we are. It's very interesting just to think about that too, because all of our business actually isn't on the island. Like when you and I are together, it's like we're not even together. It's like Vancouver a little bit, but Ottawa is like our.
Ottawa's it.
Yeah, that's where we get together, which is kind of bizarre in that sense, right?
So we're either in the House of Commons, the Metcalf, or the Shore Club.
Yeah, exactly.
Or my favorite restaurant,
yes.
La Trattoria Italia Cafe, 258 Preston Street, for those of you who might be in the Ottawa area. But got a few things. It's been a crazy time.
Mm-hmm.
I just got back from Clem 2. I hadn't been in Clem 2 in 25 years or so. I went up there to help you watch the leadership meeting you had. You brought the Chinchan Nations together and had some talks about ocean management, stuff like that. How was that week for you?
It was good. It was busy. We offered that opportunity just to it's kind of, we're trying to lead the discussion at a high level to kind of at least provide an opportunity for other people to see how we do our business. And we had a couple people interested, which is good, and they came down, and so I think they're very impressed. I think the community loves to hear it. Like, just my community alone, we talk about salmon farming all the time, but it gives them an opportunity to learn more. Some of the sea lice stuff. The sea lice stuff right now is so interesting.
We're going to pick up on that. We're going to pick up on that. Spending some time with Stewardson was eye-opening.
So I think it's a good opportunity for these other nations to kind of witness and understand what's happening, but also for our membership to continue learning and understanding industry and understanding what's in their territory. And I thought I heard really good feedback, and it made me happy. I think we did a really good job.
The thirst for information was quite amazing to me. I mean, I've worked with the Kitasoo Nation since the late 90s under, my Uncle Ben and Percy Starr and a lot of great leaders there. Then Doug Niesloss came in for a while and just always had this relationship around conservation. And then as, we started getting closer and closer to having our economic opportunities taken away from us, and I'll use that gently right now, obviously I'll speak with a little bit more clarity on the issue, but we started talking about our economic interests, and it's neat to go community by community and see people starting to understand that it's not one or the other. It's got to be both. And having some of those questions where traditionally I've dealt with a lot of people in your stewardship office that I've met in various Great Bear rainforest discussions and conventions and things like that, to meeting the people who work day in, day out in the aquaculture sites in your territory, and their want for further knowledge on, okay, what are you guys doing about conservation and how are you finding that balance? It was really enlightening for me.
Well, it's interesting right now because the government, we talk about just the reality is one or the other. We usually get told, but Canada put this new government to the test, and there's a real clarity. It can't be one or the other. There needs to be a strong economy is what keeps us all alive and keeps us prosperous and gives us opportunity and keeps food on the plate, right? And that was really came clear in this last election too. So it's really interesting. We have our discussions on Rez, but Canada itself, people have had enough with this kind of conservation discussion to some extent. There needs to be growth and an economy push. And we've done good business. We've done good opportunities, and we've been very successful with the conservation. So I think we're in a good spot. I think for ourselves overall, we've done really good work.
Well, it's interesting just to see the renewed, I don't want to go as far as say optimism, but the renewed energy around what is the possible now.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about pipelines again. We've been scared to talk about pipelines for probably 10 years.
And it's taken this banker to kind of stoke the flames, resurrect this party somehow.
And he made some major changes, and we'll get into that part a little bit later, just because people always seem to think you and I are just picking on him. But, a certain friend of ours, quote unquote, didn't make it into cabinet. And there's a lot of, there's new people to talk to about some of the existing problems that we had, and they're willing to listen to different perspectives. Is the one thing I've noticed in the short span of this government. I mean, we haven't had a chance to sit down and talk to the Prime Minister yet, but we did talk to him just before the election. And so, I think even more people are willing to understand what it takes to provide that balance. And the housing issue is really what it comes down to. I mean,
that's one of the
housing is so important across the country in every facet of life, whether it's about immigration, whether it's about First Nations, whether it's about affordability in the suburbs. Housing is a big ticket item. And the fact that we've drawn some pictures, and you guys had a great announcement last week. I don't want to steal your thunder, but I know you've started to, Kitasoo's done everything it can on the conservation side. You've done it. You've protected it. They're managing it. You've got an IPCA. You've got 60% terrestrial protection around your territories. But here you are trying to continue to thrive in aquaculture. And aquaculture, you got the smoker plant. I got to see the smoker plant. And I think one of the other cool things about seeing your community was the multi-generations working in all these fields. I believe I talked to a grandmother, her child, and her grandchild all in the same job.
Yeah.
Like, you don't see that in many places.
No. And that's just such a cool part of this, but it highlights just the importance of this for why we're sitting in here and fighting for these discussions too, because you can't pivot. The discussion about creating opportunity, economy is it's so hard to replace things we're talking about. And if it was that easy, we would have no problem.
But we would flip the switch.
We wouldn't have this discussion, right? But I sit there and I think about these elders that are working. And not even just within that other, like in any field within the community, and we just need to support and ensure that they have access to opportunity, right? So, I'm happy you got to witness that. It's very unique in that sense, I'd say.
It was very cool even to talk to the relatives and the younger, whether it be children or grandchildren of people I got to work very closely with over the years. It was a very special trip for me. I mean, the logistics was a challenge. We can't do anything about the weather.
That's life.
It decided to blow 50 one day on us, but there's worse places to be stuck than Spirit Bear Lodge.
Yeah, well, welcome to the rainforest. To the
rainforest,
the most genuine experience ever.
So, we got through the election. Man, it got ugly. It got ugly. We're here in Campbell River right now, and we're still dealing with the aftershocks of some of the comments that Aaron Gunn's made over his career.
Yeah.
And you keep hearing and both sides do it. The Conservatives do it, the Liberals do it. I don't think anyone's really worried about what the NDP's doing right now, and I say that in sort of jest. But we're in this point now where, one day it's acceptable for someone to say something when they're younger and a little more naive and not be held accountable for it later. But in some aspects, it's not. And I've been watching us being used as a political football again. And while I was waxing on before the election about I don't really care who wins, I'm going to be able to work with whoever.
Yeah.
It's just fucking exhausting to have to keep answering questions to the media about race. The Haidas, Delgamuuk, Marshall, Gladstone, lay 'em all. They're the ones who set the framework for our Aboriginal rights through the court system. It's not like it was granted to us. It's not like a prime minister granted us special powers for our rights and title. They were declared and won through litigation.
Lots of fights.
But yet we still have to justify it.
Yeah.
And it got really ugly. I mean, you know me, I never pass a microphone. For the week before the election, I just had to keep saying no comment. I have no comment on the Aaron Gunn issue. I've got no comment on the so-and-so issue. You know, if you want to talk to me about aquaculture, housing, anything like that, yes. But if you just want to talk to me about something a candidate said 6 years ago, that was a pretty stupid thing to say, you know, should be held accountable for it. But I've got no interest in furthering that dialogue.
Yeah.
Is it any different in Clem too? I mean, we're surrounded by all kinds of different societies here. Clem too, you're in the middle of Clem too.
You know, it's interesting for us because, you know, we're in this new era. Like I said earlier, like the government was tested, and they made it out just barely, right? Very,
Like the NDP and the provincial.
yeah, 100%. And these are all signs, right? And so, you know, we have a new candidate, and we have a new MP, and you know, our riding was really known as this NDP stronghold for the longest time.
Here too.
And people are just done. Yeah. You know, we need change, and you know, we have Ellis Ross now. You know, a very prominent Indigenous leader,
good friend of mine,
and you know, he's all about economy, and he has a story similar to ours in the sense of, you know, trying to get an opportunity, and so they're very successful now in that community, and I think, you know, it gives us opportunity, obviously, to have someone else to represent us in these discussions, but yeah, it's very interesting the way that the Conservatives now are kind of managing this stuff, and with Pierre not making it in his own riding, and makes it even more kind of unique to watch how things are kind of playing out with just Andrew Scheer and everyone else that's kind of waiting for their leader to return at this point.
I'm interested for our next trip to Ottawa because, I mean, you and I got to know a lot of people out there over we're battling this about 4 years now.
Yeah.
Salmon farming
Yeah.
issue where we've met kind of, I bet you, half the MPs on both caucuses over time, whether one-on-one or in joint meetings, you know, things like that. I'm really interested to go out there because there's so many new faces now. There's so many people who haven't heard why that balance is important that we've been talking about. And, you know, we sound like a broken record. Balance, but we protected the Great Bear Rainforests. We brought in over $400 million in conservation financing. That is awesome. Our stewardship offices are going to become a reality. They're a legacy going forward now, which is amazing. I would never change that work. But at that same time, we never built one house. We never built one daycare center.
Yeah.
We never even built housing for people to come work in these new opportunities. You and I both are part of nations that own grizzly bear lodges, wildlife viewing lodges. The biggest problem I have is I can't grow it big enough because I can't house any more staff. I got the staff all bunked in and stacked in like Tetris, so my guests can have their optimum experience.
Exactly.
And so, you know, we need housing at so many different levels, and waiting for the government of the day to kind of do it just is so passé now. It's really just a lazy man's way of, you know, okay, well, wait, government will get there. We just got to do it ourselves.
Yeah, no, I think, to me, that's our biggest issue. Like Kitasoo, it's interesting. We haven't built a home in 20 years. And I
saw you guys are clearing some area there.
I think, you know, councils, like we just invested, you know, over $5 million into housing, a couple major renovations and more opportunity to come, I think. But that's us. That's our investment, right? You know, the government kicked in a subsidy.
Yeah.
But that's it, right? And it doesn't go a whole long way when it comes,
especially in Con too.
No, exactly. So I think we're in that same very position. I think industry has to start providing an opportunity. That's really what we're getting to, and you know, that was our announcement. Industry was successful in a negotiation for us to get $1 million over 5 years. Yeah. That's a good step. Yeah, and that's all we need is just slow and steady investments and a good plan, because that will help housing.
Once you get that momentum, it's pretty easy to keep it going, actually. And I say that today because I'm not, you know, knee deep in application. The crap you got to do to make it work. But once you kind of get that process going, it becomes apolitical. Because you can stay within the bureaucracy. Sometimes you need the senior bureaucracy. But you just kind of get on that path. It's like riding a bike, you know. As long as I keep going slow, I'm okay. If I stop, I'm not getting back on.
You
know, but as long as we can keep the momentum going forward. But one more thing, just them too, people might notice, you know, Xai'xais and I are having some refreshing beverages because it's warm in Campbell River today. It's a nice day. We might have had a couple glasses of wine for your birthday last night, but we'll talk about that on Rez Dog Rez Dog Walkers After Dark. I was up in Clem too, and I was so excited to add a stamp to my passport. And no, I don't mean it that way, you guys. And, you know, maybe when I was in my 20s, but now that, you know, I've been traveling around a little bit, and it's my goal to have a slush on every reserve in British Columbia.
It's a good goal.
And I finally got to Clem 2 after 25 years. 25 years ago, there was no Slurpee machine.
No.
There was no Slurpee machine. There was a Slurpee machine, but it wasn't working. So as I have the general manager of... Well, it's like you're the CEO now. I forgot you got a field promotion.
I did.
Can you guarantee that Slurpee machine is going to be working next time I'm up there? And am I going to get a free one?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I'll talk to management.
Nice. Okay. Get these important issues done here.
Yeah. No.
People tease. I deal with stress and anxiety by drinking Slurpees. I used to do it with Jack Daniels or other things, and now it's just I need the sugar to calm. It's weird. I need the sugar to calm me down. But people have noticed wow, dude, you're like almost 50 and you're drinking a slush. What the fuck are you doing with that? Mike McDonald was teasing me. He actually took a picture. He's like, I can't believe you walked into this high-level strategy meeting with a slush in your head. So just to put that out there, I'm trying to have one in every First Nations community. Any of my First Nations comrades, brothers who are watching this, if you have a slush machine in your village, shoot me a text, hit me up on Twitter. Just get to me. I'm going to get to your community, and that is my goal. By the time my political career is done, I'm going to have a slush in every res in British Columbia. Okay, now I'll get back to the serious stuff. So back to housing.
Yeah.
What's sort of going on next? I mean, you and I talk about aquaculture a lot, but we both play leadership roles in our communities and in some regional groups. What are you personally working on? I know you finished your MBA last summer.
Yeah, no, it's just more of the battles we're talking about right now. It's just really getting into...
You're building a store, right?
Well, we're building a store, and that's one of our big things right now. It's a bit of a, if anything, over the last 20 years, we've saved up a good chunk of money. You've done a good amount of investments too, but this is a good chunk. We're spending probably just a bit over $7 million for this new store. And so, it's a big investment. And so that's one of our big projects we're really happy about. And hopefully it's going to provide more opportunity within the community. But yeah, we're just busy on so many files, I'd say. And it's just trying to get everything done at the same time. So we're expanding. We have our team's growing too. So, and you saw that, some of the people that are helping me. So it's been... things are changing. I'm happy. There's lots of growth and opportunity. I think
I think the challenges we have are good ones right now, just because there is a lot of opportunity out there. Don't get me wrong, colonialism sucks and it is a challenge to what we're doing. But those of us who are progressive and are looking kind of a few moves ahead have found some space to run a little.
Just look past the weeds, right? Yeah. You just, and that's to me, that's what this government, to me, I understand there's concerns with certain bills that are posed, but I think the people that are ready.
Well, it's like the Land Act, a year and a half ago.
Yeah, well,
and he kind of fumbled that. They kind of come running out the door with this great big announcement. They kind of threw it on the stage and watched it flip around a little bit.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the Land Act didn't scare me because I've been involved in these discussions, these negotiations. We've negotiated evolutionary agreements that each step leads to this. And there's more of that happening in the province than most people like to think. But the fear-mongering, that, again, is going on on both sides. I mean, I get it. I don't want government to have any more powers than they need.
Yes.
But at the same time...
We're dealing with red tape already. But
totally.
You know what, like...
It's one thing to have that bullet in your chamber, and there's a different thing than pulling the trigger.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen them this government so reluctant to weigh in on things like aquaculture and old growth forest management and other things. Do we really think that they're going to start just shooting from the hip and, executing
pipelines,
greenwriting projects that are just going to go in? No, it's got to be a transition into that. And so, I mean, while the legislation is concerning, it's not scaring me.
No, and to me, that's the thing. I see the concern, but the reality is...
It's valid.
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree. But I think there's opportunity there. And that's just how you kind of are prepared. And if not, then... You can simply say no. Like there's still due process.
Really say no. Yeah, it's still consultation that has to take place. They're just trying to expedite the consultation.
Yeah, because everyone's dealing with this overall. Everything's so process driven and bureaucratic, and it's a hindrance, right? And we're just like small organizations, just trying to do what's best for our people, right? So I understand we don't need any more issues. But this could alleviate and maybe provide more opportunities. We'll have to see.
Good. That's it. Is it? We're gonna have to see how it plays out and then respond.
Yeah.
I should say react because I'm trying not to react. I
Yeah.
always want to be in a position of leaning forward into things, which is what we're doing on the land act stuff. I mean, Nomocolas has a strategic engagement agreement about the use of Crown land.
Yeah.
Of major policy decisions that need to be made, we have a position that puts us in, line to have a discussion before it gets enacted or before the trigger gets pulled. So, I don't want to say like just because I have it, nobody else should be concerned about it. But there's a number of nations that have strategic engagement agreements now. There's 75, 80 of them throughout BC.
Well, I think, what this is giving us is, and we're seeing, like, what we're seeing that this election was all, the way it's swayed is because of Trump being involved, and now there's this massive mineral race, which, that we're changing the economy. The Prime Minister is saying these really big things. I mean, it gets me excited because how can we be a part of these opportunities, right? Because, we can expand, we can explore, we can investigate, and doesn't mean we have to do it, but still, it's just such an exciting, and there's a lot of money, and...
I mean, I remind people free and prior informed consent.
Yeah, exactly.
Not free and prior, I don't like consent.
Yeah.
So it's almost irresponsible to look at both sides of the coin on these issues.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when I ran in 2017, they asked me to write an op-ed about why the twinning of the TMX pipeline made sense. And I was like, well, it already existed. So putting it beside it, the environmental impact should be negligible. There's First Nations oversight. And then First Nations were buying into it. Yeah, we're trying to buy into it. And so I think, trying to paint the whole First Nations community, Indigenous community as kind of for or against one thing at a time is something that has to evolve. I mean, I don't...
It's too general.
It is. It is. I mean, and on my broadcast, I seem to either shit on Jonathan Wilkinson at the First Nations Leadership Council.
Yeah.
Ironically, I haven't been able to secure either of them for a future episode, but I get so mad at the province because they're like, well, we talked to the Leadership Council. I'm like, well, how many agreements do you have about geographical positions of Crown land with the Leadership Council?
Oh, did they have pricing titles?
Yeah. And that's just, it's, and ever since COVID, it's been worse because before we used to have great big summit meetings and BCAFN meetings, but now everybody since COVID has stuck to virtual, which is good because it saves money and it saves some travel and that. But some of these issues need face-to-face dialogue.
Yeah.
Aquaculture is a good one.
100%.
I've noticed when you and I walk into rooms, all the people who are usually spouting off about aquaculture probably zip their lip a little.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And so I think we need to get back to a little bit more of us giving the Leadership Council direction as opposed to them telling us how we should be responding to these new legislations and these new policies. I think the Leadership Council has done a tremendous job on just raising the floor on child welfare issues.
Yeah.
Grand Chief Stuart Phillip has done an amazing job at bringing awareness to the social inequalities and what needs to be done around that issue. I think that the Leadership Council should just be there for raising the floor.
Yeah.
Existing policy, I think the revenue sharing with Lottery BC, Gaming BC and all that, I think that's a tremendous step that could only be done by the Leadership Council. So there's certain provincial-wide policy issues that I think they need to focus on. But when it gets involved with old growth management, aquaculture, anything that is geographically site-specific, they should really be deferring to the nations whose territories that discussion's happening.
Makes sense to me.
Rez Dog Walkers is part of an ongoing conversation that connects directly to the upcoming BC Indigenous Resource Opportunities Conference, BC IROC, happening June 18th to 20th, 2025 in Nanaimo, BC. Since its inception, this conference has fostered countless successful partnerships that bring meaningful benefits to First Nations, resource developers, businesses, and all levels of government. BCI Rock continues to lay the groundwork for future collaborations and growth across the resource sector. Visit www.bcirock.ca to learn more about the conference, its sessions, and how you can participate. Look forward to seeing you there. Yeah, so with that, their elections are coming up. I was wondering if you had some time, you only have 4 other jobs. Why don't you run for the Leadership Council? You were almost trying to convince me that you were going to run in the federal election.
Well, I was very...
So you got some time on your hands.
Yeah, I got time. I'd be curious. That sounds like an interesting opportunity.
I got a lot of time for Robert and all of them on the leadership council, but it's just like government. You need some fresh eyes, you need some fresh lips, you need some fresh ears in there from time to time. I think this whole, the whole slate of them just getting reelected the last couple terms, I don't think it's advanced some issues as much as it would have. Complacency, a little bit of complacency, because we don't meet in person as much anymore. I think that just has set in. But I've talked about this before since COVID. My chiefs that I work for in the various different roles that I play a leadership role in, they're so just, nope, I got a virtual Zoom. Like it might be with 400 different First Nations leaders on wildfire management. But because it's in their calendar already, they're not accepting, well, we need to talk about this fiscal issue that we need to be on next week. And we've just come so complacent since COVID, and we just kind of virtual our way through everything now. And I think it's just left us susceptible to, missing a few things, because that healthy dialogue's not happening.
Well, we'll see how that election goes. Let's see how it goes.
Let's see if I can find some papers before you leave, Camp Wherever. I can get probably half a dozen chief signatures before we leave. I think you need 20 to be able to do it. But we should find a candidate to put in for some of these coastal issues sometimes.
Maybe Chris Roberts?
Chris has probably got some time. He's only acting band manager and chief of his community right now. But, someone should make it.
Well, I think that's really important. I think, especially in this such critical change of time of like economy is such a big piece, and so it's just you need to have someone that's understanding and willing, and there needs to be more engagement. There needs way more engagement with it, that this economy looks like, and rather than this whole what we're talking about right now is that everything fear mongering. There needs to be a real reality check that sure, yes, this is a problem, but what it could be the opportunity, and what does that look like, and where is the opportunity? And how does that look like you're going to fit in there? So I think it's good discussions, good opportunities.
We're toying some things right now around. I mean, we think there is a couple reality checks that need to be put in place. I'll always fight for First Nations involvement in sustainable resource management, but there's so much pushback and fear mongering on it right now. The nations I work with through Lakwasimook, through Namakolas, we own TFL 64 with Western Forest Products. We got a strike in front of us imminently, and it's just kind of like, we need to work some of these issues out. And there seems to be kind of this old school train of thought and this new school train of thought, and we can't find any ways to bridge the gaps between them. And I think that's pretty illustrative of where we are on a number of these discussions between First Nations and local governments, between First Nations and industry, between First Nations and environmental groups. We kind of got this old school that, got some stuff done and dug in. But now because of DRIPA and all these other different things that we're taking into consideration around relationship building, we're not really having the dialogues that need to happen. So our nations have asked me to get a bit creative, and over the next couple of weeks, we're probably going to do a bit of a reality check for some people. And, part of it will be at a couple of our locally elected officials that we're having relationship issues with. Some of it's around government and Bill 15. I mean, we're not afraid of it at our level at Namakolas. It's scary because of the impact it has on the regions. And again, the fear mongering that's happening, and that's led into some of the issues we're dealing with on labor right now. But, it's hard because no one really, there's so many protests now. Like, how do you do something and actually gain some exposure and get your message out?
Well, I think just look at our own salmon file itself, right? Sea lice, the sea lice stuff, that's very interesting. It was such a big game changer in the sense of the dialogue we're hearing, and now no one's talking about it. The news isn't posting. They're willing to post some science that doesn't make sense, from Alexander Morton, but they have no problems, It's very
where's global and CTV now, right? And just for some of our listeners' perspective, viewers, sorry, I forgot there's half a dozen people who watch as well. Recently there's been some reports released on the lice monitoring, sea lice monitoring, both in the Broughton, in Seashell, up in your territory and my territory. And ever since the removal of farms in some of these areas, lice has actually increased. And so it's ironic that no one really wants to have that discussion still. And that's what you and I have been advocating for from the start, is saying, let's sit down and do science together.
Yeah.
You know, that's why we're working on the Indigenous Center for Aquatic Health Science. We're trying to braid traditional ecological knowledge with that work.
Yeah.
But we really just have to have it. Like, it's almost, let's have it out. You know, let's draw the battle lines, get into it, have a facilitated process. So it's not a free for all.
100%.
But that's, I mean, and I think that's part of what you and I will be strategizing as we go to government, saying, okay, this is what we figured out for protection. We have this MPA network that's going to protect rock cod. It's going to protect herring. It's going to protect all these biological features. And then we have this economic development plan that's integrated with it.
Yeah.
And this is going to protect people. It's going to protect jobs. It's going to protect the economy. And here's how it all comes together. I really think the Great Bear specifically has a lot of opportunity to bring that through. All while we're dealing with Trump tariffs and all these other things. But you know what the cool thing about this is? We're actually getting asked our input before the solution's being made.
Yeah.
You know, I myself have been lucky enough to be appointed to the Softwood Lumber Advisory Council for Minister Parmar. And he's sort of come to me and said, you know, we're doing some new thinking at this. Traditionally, we'd just try to get it dealt with and kick it down the road, and it's the next person's problem.
Yeah, yeah.
He's like, we got to look into solving this. Like, we can't keep doing this. First Nations are finally becoming a thriving part of the economy. And now that these Trump tariffs are going to hammer the wood industry, the timber industry, we're going to get blamed for that.
Yeah, yeah.
So I want to start turning over every rock I can in Ottawa, in Washington, D.C. We're in discussions with some nations about selling timber to First Nations in the United States.
Yeah.
And we're really interested to see how people react to that. Are people going to be like, oh, interesting idea? Or could we go, what the fuck are they doing now?
Yeah.
To what is our government going to say? What is their government going to say? But we're just going to try to do something new.
Yeah.
Just to see what happens. And so it's interesting times because the opportunity's there, but you got to fight through a lot of the rhetoric that's still around. So we're getting ready to, you know, re-engage on salmon farming files and some of these other things. You know, what do you tell the people in your community as we're going through this? I mean, we got till 2029 to sort of sort some things out. I think there's a bit more of an open canvas, you know, a bit more of a blank canvas for us to work from. But you've literally got, you know, 48%, 50% of your community working in aquaculture, in seafood, sustainable seafood production. What do you tell them? Like,
well, trust the process and have faith in what we're doing at this one, because
that's gone well for us as First Nations people.
I think, you know, the work we've done so far is, you know, that's what we've kind of operated with, is just following this process that, you know, we may think is painful. A lot of meetings we're going to have, you know, we've done, you know, 3 years worth of meetings already, right? Now we're on year 4 and, you know, we're starting from scratch again. So I think it gives us so much opportunity to kind of pivot and have more discussions and re-engage. And I think this government's much different. You know, they're not, ministers aren't getting to do what they want and aren't threatening to cause a coup or whatever. And I think these guys, you know, if they start causing problems, I think there's, you know, an election, you know, these things scare them and they have to stay in line with what the messaging of Canada is. And so I think
that's one of the advantages of the closeness of the race is they're all kind of accountable to each other.
Yeah, 100%. And that's with Carney, he's doing conservative things, and that's why we're in a good, very interesting and good position, I think, too, because he knows what he needs to do at this point, and he's made it very clear. The economy, and, you know, whatever else it is to you know, housing and these things are all critical. And those are all things that Canada is wanting at this point. So I think, like you're saying, the canvas is clean. We have a new opportunity to kind of engage with people. Some of them are the same players, but, you know, some of the critical people that were causing us problems aren't there or aren't as prevalent as they were.
It's funny because while we were stuck up in Clem 2, you and I are here for the BC Salmon Farmers Association AGM. They've asked us to come give an update on kind of where First Nations are on this, but we were up there kind of working on the presentation and we were talking about the barriers. And I just jokingly like, well, obviously, you know, Minister Wilkinson was a barrier, Minister Murray was a barrier. And so we actually started putting pictures of all the people who've been barriers and how many of them are gone now.
Yeah, it's just like, you know, when probably SNL did you know, the Trump, you know, how many of his cabinet are gone?
Yeah.
The presentation, it looks the exact same basically. These, you know, there's these dozen people that are just kind of no longer existent, and some of them have like kamikaze to kind of just try to sink us, and they
missed,
and they haven't done very well. So yeah, it's a good opportunity. I'm really excited to see how we're able to work with some of these.
I think the perseverance that we've been able to show as the coalition, because it's not, it's not a traditional group of First Nations who are linked by language, who are linked by culture, we're linked by economic opportunity and sustainable opportunities.
Well, how many other groups are like us?
Oh boy. And I mean, the pitches that we can throw at government are interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, in the industry, how our industry partners, they have to, like, they have to work with us. They have, and the regulation, the expectation, they know what we're expecting of them. And so it's not like before, where industry was just kind of tough and rugged, and you didn't do what you need to do. Like, they didn't really care. There wasn't informed consent. There wasn't any of that stuff. So I think it's a different ballgame. Like I always talk about this, our industry partners have grown so much more than other industry partners, I would say,
in a short time frame.
Yeah, and that's all because of pressure and the need to be relevant and to kind of.
We're still, I mean, it's funny because I go from these very progressive discussions with the aquaculture sector, which is not just finfish. I mean, we've talked about this, lots to a lot of people, that finfish simply gives us the foundation to look at shellfish and seaweed and organics and the other things that are possible out there. But, getting these managing directors to go to their kind of bosses, whether it be in Norway or Japan for Cermac's sake, and to be going to bat for us to say our First Nations want this. This is kind of the rules of engagement now, and knowing that our rules and our oversight is actually more cautionary and more, it's got more teeth to it than the existing federal systems. I think really has us in a place where we can take this industry to the next level. I do see a reduction of a couple more sites, but I also see capacity growing in some sites.
Well, and I think, the way our industry is operating right now, the pens, there's tons of opportunity for us to expand and grow, and I think increase tonnage in certain areas. And I think there's ways for us to be creative to get to a flourishing point for everyone, I think, at this point.
Well, and the product's still in demand. There's still just can't get enough of this on the shelves. I mean, that's the ironic thing about this whole debate is, I've used the term blood diamonds probably half a dozen times in Ottawa, but, this is a safe, healthy protein that everyone needs in their diet across the world, not just North America.
Yeah.
And we're getting fought tooth and nail about how we can get this product to market.
It's really only a BC problem, and it's not even a whole of BC problem.
No,
it is metropolitan. Downtown, and the reality is, you go to any of the other provinces, they're just there to have a good hunk of fish, right?
It was neat as we were getting closer and closer with the BC caucus, and I don't mean in relationship wise, but as we just surrounded them more, and it was just attrition. We just kept banging on the door. Okay, well, if you're not going to meet with us, we're going to tell the Prime Minister's office you're not meeting with us. And so they finally started meeting with us, but then they kind of kept turning on each other. Was an interesting part of me. Some of the guys in the Fraser Valley were like, it's just those crazy. Well, I won't use the term that they used, but it's just those other guys from North Vancouver and West Vancouver.
Yeah, and it was interesting. And it is, when it came down to it, there was discussion of race, which to me was so interesting.
Because it was it wasn't reversed, but it was.
Yeah,
it was familiar, but it wasn't how we deal.
And I'm like,
racism.
This is your problem right now. Like, we're talking to you about our problem, and you're telling us you're dealing with your internal issues right now. So it's interesting. I'm very curious.
Which ironically is racial against us.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious because there's new candidates, right? Is BC caucus going to be the same? Or there is some very powerful Indigenous people now, in BC caucus.
Definitely Wade Grant.
Yeah, and how is that dynamic going to look? Because that was our problem. BC caucus, they were willing to die on the cross basically before we could do any of this.
Before we could even share information.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. Is cabinet or is caucus going to be able to do whatever they want, or is Carney going to say we got to change how we're operating right now? Because that this isn't the old days with Trudeau. We have to be progressive.
Yeah. Well, and we need to be prepared, because
Yeah.
I don't think the windows are going to be open long. I think they're going to grab, half a dozen pet projects kind of in each region, coastal prairies,
Yes.
Ontario, Maritimes, and those who are ready to go, I think, are going to find some tremendous success.
Yeah.
And the prototype always gets more funding than the model that gets spit out after. So I'd like to be in the front of that line.
Yeah,
for sure.
100%. Well, it's interesting too, the Prime Minister in his dialogue. It's interesting how it's ever evolving, because we have people like Guilbeault saying something and the Prime Minister contradicting him, or Champagne talking about budget. So that the Prime Minister is such in tune with Canadians' feedback, it sounds like. So you guys don't like it happening in autumn, the budget. Well, let's see what we can do it sooner than that. So it's interesting. He's trying to keep himself in a place where people aren't just going to say, well, this is a typical Liberal thing. The same fluff we dealt with the last 10 years, right? So,
which is sad. I mean, I've got this. I don't know if I'm the kiss of death for some of these guys. I just start building relationships with some of these leaders as they go out the door. Same thing with Christy Clark. Christy Clark and I built this wonderful relationship. And I feel so bad because, she put a lot of time and energy into my campaign. And we lost by 1 seat. And so I really felt bad for Christy. I'm like, fuck, Christy came to me to try to get an out that she needed in an important at bat, and I totally missed. And then, getting to know Trudeau over the last year and a half, 2 years, through not only the salmon farming file, but the Great Bear Sea.
yes.
But the interesting thing was he finally started coming around on understanding that importance of the economy on that side.
Yeah.
But then now he's out the door. So
Well, he was a Walking Dead for a while, because we met Carney. It was probably a year ago, right? And we were told this is the next Prime Minister, and we sat there and listened to talk. And I just you could see the way he articulated, the way he talked. I'm just like, this could be the guy. And lo and behold, a year later. And he's our Prime Minister, and that's pretty impressive in regards to foresight for some of these people we work with too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think next time you come back, we should talk about kind of the Ottawa routine, because we're veterans at it, but it's kind of a new world now again. Yeah. It's kind of like going back to school for after the summer vacation.
Well, what is our new talking?
Who's hanging out with who? Or,
our talking points are going to have to change probably.
Need to update them.
Yeah.
But I think one other thing while I got you here is we're starting to deal with the roles for our hereditary people in our communities. I know you have, people that you talk to within your community. I know your father's a hereditary chief like my father is. Yeah. So you and I have sort of grown up around this. It just, I don't want to put you on the spot. Well, I do, obviously, because I'm asking you a question. But, from the good sides and the bad sides, just some of your thought on, the role of hereditary leadership. And, I'll throw myself out there first, where I believe it's part of the goal. But I don't think that should be determined while we're working some of these other issues out. And the example I'll use is the amount of reading and research that it takes to deal with a lot of the issues that we're dealing with. People don't really understand. And so, we'll be dealing with salmon farm file, volumes of text and literature that, we produced and had produced and then had to, proofread and check and all that. And then we go to our hereditaries with a 3-page power slide, a 3-slide PowerPoint, presentation, and try ask them to, what do you think on this? Yeah. So I don't think we're quite finding out how to work with our hereditaries properly. And I say that just based on my experience. I mean, I've only worked with 88 elected chiefs, probably 200 hereditary chiefs. What do I know?
Over the last 30 years, right?
Yeah. But I've watched it. I've watched some places where it's worked, and I've watched some places where it's just been a disaster. Or just some of your thoughts, and you don't have to base it on the Clem 2 experience.
No.
Like that, because I know a lot of your community listens to.
I think the hereditary discussion is very interesting. And like you're saying, not even just as in Clem 2, but overall. And I think it's really hard.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's there's an identity crisis to some extent, because there's these elected leaders. Are we relevant? How do we fit in this discussion? Because people don't understand that the band council, it's a conduit. It's a conduit to colonialism. Like, that's what it is. It was constructed. Yeah. And so, to me, the chiefs are relevant. The chiefs have a place, but, it's easy to say, but the reality is the amount of work you and I do, but they'd have to do just as much to understand, to be confident to make these decisions. And we're basically, we have to go and ask them for advice. So it's more of an advisory discussion at this point. What is this? How do you feel about this? And what is a temperature check? And I think it's a wicked problem. It's not long I've been talking overlap, because that's when they're critical. That's what they're here for.
Us internally.
Yeah, and so it's an interesting kind, because there's decision making at a big scale that for the community, but then there's how do you deal with the other, the overlap stuff. You're if anything, this is your job.
Yeah.
Elected councillors, we're, if anything, kind of facilitating, but you are the rights and title holders, not the council. Yeah. And so, how are you prepared to do that? Are you prepared to stand up and speak these things? Do you know your history of your people?
I did build a collaborative relationship with elected council and hereditaries, because it seems very combative sometimes.
Yeah, and you look at other nations, and it's interesting, what Xai'xais as an example, and that friction they may have had with, industry opportunities with the hereditary not being interested in it. And I think it's very interesting for us is, we're trying to figure out how the hereditary fit in with this process. And, we're building a constitution. How does that look? How does that fit? And what do you feel as though you need to be a part of? And we're bringing hereditary chiefs in for bigger discussions now. Yeah. We're talking about bylaws. We're talking about enforcement. And because we're dealing with hard issues. We're dealing with alcoholism. We're dealing with these issues that, we want to kick people out because you're being a nuisance to the community. You're causing harm to the community. And so I've got burned before by my own community for doing these things. And I wouldn't say not bad, but it's just, I'm very black and white when it comes to this stuff. And you need to stick to your guns. If we say something,
you build policy, stick to it.
You got to stick to it. And you can't be like, well, this is my
so-and-so. Yeah,
you can't do that. And
he's had a hard life.
Yeah.
Which is valid. But
I agree, but you're causing more distress for everyone else. So it's really interesting. How do they fit? How do they support? But then the question is, because we're working on this now, and there's if something happens, they're gonna get sued. Like we at council, we're protected. So and so I've said to some chiefs, well, if you're gonna be doing this, have you guys thought about what's gonna protect you guys? Because nothing's protecting you guys. It's yourself personally.
And we see it on both sides of the development versus non-development. I mean, we've seen environmental organizations come in and create hereditary chiefs. Mm-hmm. Throw them some money. Some of them have a feast. Some of them just start declaring it. And if you declare it loud enough, people usually just stop arguing about it. But then even on the development side, I mean, I was joking at a conference in the old days. I've been around long enough that, I'd get invited to a hockey game, and that was consultation.
Yeah.
I won't say what forest company Interfor would bring me to a hockey game, and then they'd be like, "Oh, we talked to Dallas about this last week. He didn't bring up any concerns with it. Never talked about the project. We were just talking about life and building a relationship." But we've seen kind of the bad sides of that, and as a young leader, I had to learn. Okay, I'm liable for some of these things now, and so as we engage our hereditary chiefs, we're trying to do it more than just lip service. Mm-hmm. But it's an evolutionary process.
It's a contentious issue in certain, it's very sensitive.
Yeah,
because this is someone's identity too, right? Like when I get my dad's name and when you get your dad's name, that's you. Yeah. And now it's just very interesting. These, making these discussions or bringing these, people have polished, people have participated in. Now we're trying to figure out how they fit into this structure, which we like, right?
And the accountability that it requires. I think that's the other side that some of our upcoming hereditary needs. There's an accountability issue here.
That's the sensitive.
If you want to make a decision, you better know what decision you're making. Because if it doesn't work out well, you need to know why it didn't work out, who made it, and how you fix it.
And you have to be frank. Well, you have to be being able to acknowledge that it didn't work, or there was a problem. Like there needs to be accountability, like you're saying, because it's just. No one wants to take accountability.
No.
To me, that's always a big problem. Well, it was this, and I'm just like, well,
And we see every sitting government of the day do that. I mean, the NDP still blames the 16 years of Liberal power, and the Liberals still blame the 10 years of NDP power in the 90s. Like,
yeah.
and so we need some more accountability in our people who make decisions
And we just like
across the board.
Yeah, well, then this is the problem just for us, because it's just like it's intense, right? It's for us. It's so close to home, but we just want things to be done right.
Yeah.
And we want what's best for our people, and that's kind of, you just got to be honest, and it wouldn't work, or it's very interesting how this is going to evolve, and many nations are trying to work on some of these things right now.
When you see some areas where it does work, like you and I work with a number of Nuchanoth bands through the coalition work and marine planning work and different things like that. You watch a house that works under a hereditary system. They have elected council that implements what the hereditaries develop. Tloquet, same thing. You and I, deal with Chief Robert Martin, Chief Tom Simon.
Yeah.
Or Simon Tom, sorry. But then they work with their bureaucracy.
Yeah.
And it seems to work there.
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely a lot of potential for it to grow.
We'll learn to understand from some of the other communities.
And the trust that it takes for them to do that because of the accountability that's there. But I know we're getting close to time. You and I have to go give a presentation. But BCI Rock, you're coming back down. I'm going to have you on twice this summer.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited.
Yeah, BCI Rock is going to be awesome. We have over 500 registered already.
Nice.
I've got a Q&A set up with the Premier.
Okay.
I'm trying to decide whether I'm actually going to ask him about Bill 15. I shouldn't say too much because his staff members are going to be watching this, and his show up might get canceled if it go too far. But no, BCI Rock and how I roll. I never cheap shot people. But BCI Rock's going to be good. We got 2.5 days of just great panels, and you're coming down to talk about food security.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I'm very excited, and maybe some karaoke after.
I think we've arranged Chris Roberts, the Chief of Roberts, to be the opening act.
Good.
We're hosting a Rez party this year. I said,
Nice.
you know what? We keep joking about it. Everybody seems to matriculate to the same after-hour spots after it's done.
Yeah.
So this year we're just going to host a little bit of a diving board into the evening.
Good.
With a Rez party. We're going to have some CCR cranking. We're going to have some chip and dip. We're probably going to have some flags hanging in the windowsill. We're going to go as stereotypically offensive as we can, but it's just going to be an ability for people to come together and have a good time.
Comfortable. Comfortable. Yeah. Well, that's good. That's
especially with you and the Chief belting out some Frank Sinatra and some,
yeah.
What's Chief Roberts' go-to? Great Balls of Fire. I think is one of his openers. So get your silky voice ready, your Bublé type voice ready.
I was telling my mom because we were talking about my girlfriend and her. She's just karaoke is just a big part of her life and her family's life. So karaoke has become, I'm used to it, but now it's even more so.
Okay, now it's really prevalent.
We were singing a Whole New World Coming Up, Speeding Up the Island last night. So
just before you hit the road.
Yeah. So I'm like very excited.
Nice. Well, you better have her ready.
Oh, she'll be there.
No, ready to do a routine too. If we can get 3 or 4 people going, then the mic will be busy. That's 100%. So you get those first 3 people out there having a good time, it just takes off.
Easy. Yeah.
So maybe if you guys are lucky, I might do an episode. I do a pretty mean Friends in Low Places with Garth Brooks. At least I think it's pretty good.
Well, let's see.
And I'm one of my toughest critics sometimes.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm pretty easy on myself.
Well,
but brother, it's always good to have you here. I love it when you get to ride shotgun with me on Rez Dog Walkers. Why don't we have you back on? Maybe we'll do another episode from Ottawa next time you and I head out there. But love it. Thanks for everything.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Take it easy, brother.
Cheers.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Just to remind you, BC Indigenous Resource Opportunities Conference, June 18th to 20th at the Nanaimo Convention Center, www.bciroc.ca. Register. It's going to be a great time. Isaiah is going to sing. Chief Chris Roberts is going to sing. And we might even see if we can get another you would think, people that you might not think would be out there to sing. We're going to have a good time. Let's see, I bet you could belt a tune.
Yeah.
Well, let's see what we can do.
Yeah.
All right. We'll see you all at BCI Rock. Ow, ow, ow!